Wind howled through snowy mountains, waiting for blood, as an arrogant captor sneered, "Escape is impossible. Where is the relic?" The captive didn't flinch, he just laughed, calling them fools. Despite missing both arms, he sneered, "Will missing limbs make me beg?" Enraged by his defiance, one guard urged Calm to contact command first. Using a magical crystal, they reported, "Ghost of the North secured. Send coordinates." While one guard raged at his stubborn survival, another claimed he was just stalling. Spitefully, they decided to torture him as payback for the freezing cold. Amid their threats, the captive attempted the unimaginable. They turned, gloating and ready to inflict pain, after a casual coin flip decided who would torture him first. Suddenly, the captive bit down hard on his severed arm in the snow. He brutally reattached it, his glaring eyes refusing defeat. His name was Zeke Draker, his family's first unawakened failure. Born a dragon slayer unable to use aura, he had been exiled as trash. He fought to survive, recalling that chasing only power leads to ruin. Zeke dashed, sword gleaming in his restored hand, as the coin slowly fell toward his foe. The moment it landed on heads, the tosser's head flew, blood spraying as Zeke ghosted past. Zeke muttered, "I hate that quote. It's only for the privileged," while glaring at the last man with lethal intent. He lunged at lightning speed, cleaving sword and chest. The weak are crushed and robbed. That's reality. Zeke looked at his bloody side and viciously reattached his other arm, stunning his foes. "No escape," he murmured. Terrified, they screamed, "Monster! Behead him!" But fearless, Zeke stormed in for the dance of death. Desperate enemies scrambled to contain the demon, trapping him in an inescapable sword formation. When the dust cleared, it revealed a horror. Zeke had slaughtered them all. But it cost his life. Dozens of swords pierced his back. Coughing blood on his knees, he whispered, "It's over. I'm dying." His revenge had failed, but stealing the Emperor's relic earned him a bitter smile. His trembling palm revealed the relic, a glowing jeweled dragon. Accepting death, he whispered, "Sorry, Alicia." Suddenly, his blood hit the statue, igniting a golden aura. A system window flashed. "Your will awakens ancient power. A dragon's soul seeks the unyielding." A specter embraced him, asking, "Accept the contract?" Fading, Zeke mocked his dying hallucinations, but the urgent voice echoed its question. Spitting blood, he snapped, "I agree. Now let me die." The window flashed. Awakening covenant confirmed. An unstoppable power activated, starting a countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Following a flash, a younger Zeke said, "That's exactly what happened." He woke healed before a mirror, stunned to realize he had regressed. Impossible, he stared. Despite his youth, phantom sword pains throbbed. Zeke recognized the place. He was trapped in the cradle. The Draker family's brutal facility forged humans into lethal weapons. It bred dragon slayers, one of 3 families ruling the world. Hero Trakand Draker built this glory by slaying Bahamut a millennium ago, and their boiling blood granted everyone the destructive aura blessing. This guaranteed elite awakening for all, except for the outcast, Zeke. A blue system window appeared, announcing a reboot. Zeke jolted upright, eagerly awaiting the screen's impossible surprises. It logged his soul and began integrating his body. Absorbing the great dragon's will granted him system access. The attributes panel coldly activated, surrounding him with screens. It mirrored old games, making him wonder if the artifact caused this madness. Ranked low, his class was Healer, a dangerous rarity with locked draconic skills. Zeke touched the glowing interface, noting, "It's tangible, like digital myths," as he fluidly navigated its menus and stats. Examining the text, he questioned his mysterious class skill, which was written in a dead dragon alphabet. His teacher once said ancient classes trained exclusive skills. As a healer, he heals. Zeke recalled bitterly, late awakening brought hellish, near-fatal training, but the system confirmed his class, urging him to test it. With a mere thought, blinding light flared in his palm. Shocked, he remembered his past healing took decades to unlock, having required unlocking his ether hall much later. Zeke focused deeply as purple mist shielded his body. He opened his eyes, his intuition confirmed. His ether hall was fully active. Despite losing his honed body, he kept all his magical skills and combat memories. This gave him a massive head start over his past self. To exploit this, he needed to inventory his new system, and to capitalize on this advantage, he must inventory his current abilities and know what lies at his command. A sudden knock in a hoarse voice interrupted him. Panicking, Zeke wondered how to hide the glowing screens. The man barged in, scolding Zeke for not being ready. He demanded his master's attention. It was his servant, Decker. Confused, Zeke realized Decker couldn't see the screens and sighed. Decker released a heavy aura, doubting Zeke's seriousness. The memory hit hard. He used to tremble before this servant. Despite his veteran mind, his young body instinctively dreaded him. However, the system-activated Balanced Mind instantly cleared his panic. Zeke breathed easily. Balanced Mind cleared his tension instantly. Decker interrupted his calm, demanding attention for the crucial event. Dark memories flashed through Zeke's mind. Crimson blood on cold stone. His own blood. Decker's voice broke the nightmare, stressing the savage pancratium test. Draker children faced the cradle, 5 years of hellish training from age 7. Instructors assessed them yearly in the ruleless pancratium arena. Students could sometimes choose their opponents, and with no rules, injuries were severe and often fatal. This savage arena dictated a student's academy rank, forcing children to fight to the death. "Today is the pancratium," the strict instructor echoed. "Your final assessment." The students roared, "Yes, sir!" Head instructor Pan Mark announced, "We begin the massacre immediately." Amid cheers, contemptuous glances targeted Zeke. They whispered, "He's back? After last year, I'd run. What a disgrace." Zeke heard it all. Mark ignored them, calling Aaron and Jotai to the ring. They faced off like beasts as Mark raised his hand and dropped it, starting the bloodbath. One student recklessly charged, throwing a heavy punch. The other smiled, dodged, and landed a lethal kick to the chin. Zeke yawned, muttering, "It's over. That's what a reckless charge gets you." Aaron won, and Zeke realized his childhood terror was gone. To a veteran, these kids were insects. Across the stands, a student noticed Zeke's yawn. He laughed sadistically, cracking his knuckles. Finally, Mark called Zeke and Leon. Leon glared with hostility and sneered, "Back for more? Guess last year wasn't enough." Zeke coldly ignored the chatter, recalling the last pancratium when Leon had mercilessly beaten him bloody. Zeke knew Leon rigged the matchups, but dragon slayers must overcome dirty tricks. Still, he wondered, why share blood with such filth? In his past life, the 4 direct siblings never bonded. Instead, dozens of lowly cousins constantly bullied him. Leon kept taunting, "I admire your stupid courage, after I shattered you last time, or maybe you're just too stupid to learn." Balanced mind erased Zeke's anger. He replied with terrifying calm, "Call me that again, and I won't be nice." Leon mocked Zeke, doubting he could do anything, but Zeke's blur-fast punch sent him flying instantly. He activated the terrifying knockout blow. This was a high risk. Missing means the force recoils fatally. Leon hit the ground, screaming and clutching his face. Zeke's hand glowed with ether. He had overshot a simple KO. Mark scolded Zeke for attacking before the signal, but Zeke smirked. Battlefields don't wait. First strike wins. Cold sweat soaked Mark. Zeke's bloodlust was pure terror. Leon stood, claiming he was fine, but Mark didn't buy it as blood poured from Leon's shattered face. Leon insisted on continuing, vowing to crush the garbage. Zeke disdained him. Leon refused to learn. Mark reset them, then signaled the official start. Leon charged like a bull, and Zeke met him with a silent, steady barrage. Leon told himself the first punch was just a fluke. He felt Zeke's punches were weak and his defense held, yet he braced for a left-hand counter. As Zeke advanced to strike, Leon ducked, grabbing Zeke's inner knee. He took Zeke's back, yelling, "Predictable," and initiated a takedown. He vainly planned to teach Zeke a lesson, but instantly, Leon took a soul-shaking counterblow. Mark stood paralyzed by what he saw. Leon's body shook violently from the shock as he stared at the grounded Zeke, thinking, "This is wrong." Zeke's IQ was lethal. He flipped the certain takedown. Zeke's knee smashed Leon's chin, breaking the grip. Leon thought the fall was victory, but Zeke's calm was impossible. Leon staggered, stomach churning, paralyzed and helpless. He tried to retreat, but Zeke's kick mangled his thigh. Balance gone, Leon teetered on the edge and threw a desperate punch. Zeke smiled, testing his power. Enhanced senses activated, and the world slowed to a crawl. Zeke dodged the slow punch with veteran fluidity. As a master of ether, Zeke wove threads around Leon's arm, using Leon's own momentum against him. He slammed Leon down, shattering the stone floor. Mark and the students stood frozen in shock, unable to believe this beast was the boy they mocked. Zeke followed up with the lethal, precise thrust. His elbow hammered Leon's chest, snapping ribs audibly. Zeke stood cloaked in aura. Fools need lessons too. And while Leon's lips trembled, begging with a voice barely heard, "Stop," Zeke completely ignored him and continued delivering brutal punches relentlessly and repeatedly and violently onto his opponent's face, until he finally stood upright, his hands dripping with crimson blood. Zeke announced for all to hear, "This is the tax for crossing the line with me," adding with a sense of relief that his mind has cleared now, after releasing some tension and sweating a little. And he proceeded to scan the present faces, identifying some in the crowd. Then he issued an open challenge, inviting anyone who has an objection to step down into the fighting arena and prove it. The laughter of one student rose, announcing his choice of Zeke as an opponent and affirming that he has a lot to say with his actions. This opponent's face was not absent from Zeke's memory. He was Jakin Verdick, one of his annoying cousins. Zeke coldly accepted the challenge, saying, "But crushing you alone would be boring," then directed an invitation to Jaken's servant, Liam, to join them in the ring. Jaken seethed with anger from this explicit insult, asking with denunciation whether Zeke meant him with his words. To which Zeke replied in a tone dripping with sarcasm, "Is there any fool other than you here?" igniting the flames of anger in Jaken's veins immediately. He jumped, accompanied by Liam, into the heart of the arena, while Mark shouted, warning Zeke against launching any attack before hearing the starting signal. A hidden smile drew on Zeke's mouth, telling himself that fate has an exciting surprise in store for him, meeting Liam again. Let us pause for a moment at the history of Liam, the young man who will be known in the future by the terrifying title King of Mercenaries. For despite being merely a servant to Jaken currently, destiny will lead him to join the training grounds within the academy. And given his status as a relative from a distant branch of the family, he was deprived of elite education. However, he fought until he snatched a seat at the higher Valhalla Academy, ending up fighting in the ranks of a small country's army before his star shined as a renowned mercenary. Liam later managed to establish his own military legion, which succeeded in uniting and merging the three largest mercenary factions under one banner to crown himself undisputed as the King of Mercenaries. And as soon as Mark's voice rang out announcing the start of the bout, Jaken initiated a surprise attack that at first glance seemed devastating and lethal. But Zeke surprised him coldly, reminding him that he asked them to attack together moments ago, clenching his fist solidly to block the attack. Jaken growls in denunciation, wondering if Zeke really thinks he'll be led by his cheap tricks and delivering a crushing kick from top to bottom. However, Jaken steps back, moaning from a sudden pain sweeping through his leg, revealing that Zeke had firmly blocked the blow with his forearm, mocking his opponent that he should have paid close attention before recklessly kicking. Jaken had no choice but to stare in shock at his painful leg, and in that lapse, Zeke pounced towards him like a predator, amazed by his opponent's stupidity, who looked away in the heat of battle for the second time. In a lightning-fast movement, Zeke charged his fist with terrifying aura energy, prompting Jaken to raise his arms in a desperate attempt to fend off the impending attack. Zeke mocks his panicked features, commenting that terror has completely taken hold of him. Instead, he punched him with a harsh low kick, targeting the exact spot of his previous injury, following up with biting sarcasm at his inability to predict this simple trick, asserting that this weakness is what drove him to invite them to fight together. And without any time gap, Zeke followed his kick with a brutal punch that pierced Jaken's defenses, tearing him from the inside and causing internal bleeding, making Jaken fall to the ground helplessly. Zeke whispers in disdain, acknowledging that this pathetic level is not up to the challenge. Jaken screams, calling for Liam's help, ordering him to intervene and fight on his behalf. We catch a glimpse of Liam standing quietly on the other side of the ring, while Jaken writhes in pain under his opponent's feet. Liam pulls his hands out of his pockets with suspicious slowness, leading Zeke to contemplate his massive body in astonishment, wondering to himself how a 12-year-old could possess such a monstrous build. He realized that the biggest obstacle lies in the length of his opponent's arms, meaning that leaving the initiative to Liam would completely paralyze Zeke's movement. And as soon as Liam pulled his hand back in preparation to deliver his strike, Zeke launched towards him like a shot arrow, utilizing his aura to double his speed and showering his opponent with a barrage of lightning-fast punches, justifying this by the necessity of imposing his control over the course of the bout from the very first moment. The ring ignites with the movement of the two contestants, who move fiercely across every inch of it, where Zeke resorted to a technique known as severing, which showers the opponent with a storm of successive strikes to completely disrupt his field of vision. The rest of the students stood glued to their spots, their minds incapable of comprehending the combat prowess displayed by Zeke. The bewilderment even reached instructor Mark himself, who justified their shock by the fact that they hadn't witnessed a combat display of this level before, only for Mark to discover that the technique used belongs to the Northern Combat School, which are rare and unknown methods in the Central region, where absolute supremacy belongs to sword arts, wondering in bewilderment how Zeke mastered such secret methods. On the other hand, excruciating pains were squeezing Zeke's body, who expressed his complaint about the miserable state of his current frail build, which drained his energy just from engaging in this brief skirmish. And what made matters worse was Liam's steel body, standing like a mountain, taking the blows without the slightest attempt to dodge or retaliate, prompting Zeke to recall in his memory the specter of the future Liam, back when he was the bloodiest and most ferocious king of mercenaries. Blood began to drip from Zeke's fist, realizing his body is standing on the verge of collapse, but now having uncovered the secret of Liam's strength, he resolved to crush him and pierce his impenetrable defenses. Zeke begins to gather his energy to launch a decisive attack, while Liam anticipates him with cautious, alert looks.
For Zeke to explode forward, delivering a punch saturated with immense energy that created a shockwave tearing through the air from the sheer force of it. And before it touched Liam's face, the latter, who was watching it with focus, managed to dodge it fluidly, deflecting Zeke's fist to the side. An overwhelming shock takes hold of Zeke, telling himself that Liam wasn't supposed to be able to see the aura with the naked eye, concluding that these people possess a terrifying supernatural sixth sense. At that moment, Liam tightened his grip on Zeke's arm and wrapped around his waist, and just as he proceeded to forcefully throw him to the ground, an excruciating pain surprisingly swept the back of his head, for Zeke had masterfully exploited this opening, directing a violent kick that landed directly on the back of his opponent's skull. And without wasting a fraction of a second, Zeke tightened his grip on Liam's arm, and thanks to his enhanced senses, he proceeded to apply a complex choking technique. However, the massive difference in physical build kept Liam standing on his feet. Liam started coughing heavily, trying to catch his breath, as Zeke coldly whispers to him that no matter how great his brute strength is, it won't do him any good if the flow of oxygen to his brain is cut off. But suddenly, a tearing pain swept Zeke's body, making him vomit blood following consecutive brutal punches Liam delivered to his flank. Zeke declares to himself that if Liam is insistent on violent resistance, then he is fully prepared to match him, their burning gazes meeting with unyielding determination. As Zeke doubled his pressure and choke around Liam's neck, while Liam continued delivering his crushing blows to his opponent's ribs non-stop. Terror loomed over the faces of the students from the brutality of this bout, with the exception of one female student who was observing the scene with obvious amusement. Even Instructor Mark stood frozen in his place, unable to avert his gaze from this bloody epic. Finally, Liam's stiffened grip loosened, causing Zeke to also collapse, tumbling down, revealing the scene of Liam's fall into unconsciousness while heavy blood covered Zeke's flank as a result of the lethal blows he endured.
The female student who was enjoying the show muttered that this high level is exactly what she had been expecting from him, affirming that crushing him will be an achievement worth the effort, and adding with denunciation that it is entirely impossible for him to be allowed to fight another bout after this violent massacre. After a short period passed, Decker's voice echoes, indicating he received news of Zeke's injury and inquiring with apparent concern about his condition. Zeke reassures him that he is perfectly fine. However, Decker asks for permission to check his pulse himself. Zeke immediately realizes that Decker's true goal is to feel his pulse to verify the awakening of his aura, sighing in boredom and asking him to wait a moment. Then he extends his hand to him, receiving thanks from Decker, who began to feel deep blue energy pathways flowing forcefully and smoothly within his servant's veins, causing signs of shock to rise on Zeke's face, wondering in bewilderment whether Decker holds the rank of Blue Knight, while the latter continued his examination with focus. Zeke explains to himself that examining the awakened is usually limited to feeling the energy centers, but Decker's precise scrutiny and amazing aura control prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that he is a Blue Knight. Zeke elaborates that knights vary in ranks and are classified according to their combat skills and the extent of their control over the aura. The rank of White Swordsman represents the beginner level, mostly comprising children before they receive the blessing, followed by the rank of Yellow Swordsman, where the aura is awakened and the energy centers are opened, which is a level reached by all cradle trainees immediately after receiving the blessing. And once a warrior masters taming his aura and directing it freely, he is crowned with the title of Knight, and the rank of Purple Knight is the rank that entitles him to infuse aura energy into his sword's blade. As for the Blue Knight rank, it allows its holder to manifest the aura itself in the form of a cutting blade, while the rank that breaks all barriers of the ordinary is the one that reached by the King of Mercenaries Liam in the future, which is the very same one Zeke ascended to before he regressed back in time, known as the Red Knight rank. There are also those titled Black Knight, but they are mere legends and a rarity barely worth mentioning across the entire continent. Zeke dives into his questions about the secret that makes a competent fighter worthy of commanding armies settle for the role of a personal servant and escort. But he brushes these thoughts aside, considering them unimportant, for no matter how great Decker's power reaches, he will never be able to detect his ether energy, that legendary power to which only two people in this vast world hold the keys. Decker releases Zeke's wrist from his grip and gives him a piercing look, wondering whether he is hiding a secret from him. To which Zeke responds with a counterattack, asking a similar question, which caused shock to Decker, who never imagined that the roles would be reversed with such audacity.
Zeke lets out a light laugh, claiming he is only joking with him, yet doubts continued to gnaw at Decker's mind regarding the secret behind this radical and sudden transformation in his master's personality. Zeke directs his words to his servant, pointing out that the phrasing of his question is flawed, and that it would have been more appropriate for him to ask, why didn't Zeke change until this very moment? Then he follows it with a firm statement that the changes will be massive and that everything will regain its proper order and place, and that the only task resting on Decker's shoulders right now is to obey and follow behind him without discussion. Decker bows his head in agreement and informs him of the completion of the preparations for the training room he had previously ordered. Zeke praises him thankfully, expressing his great admiration for his quick wit and efficiency in executing orders. Then he orders him to leave and get some rest. Zeke is left alone with his thoughts, analyzing the situation that the spy tasked with watching him is obliged to stick to him like a shadow to ensure a smooth flow of information. He started turning over the possibilities regarding the identity of the instigator who planted this spy, completely ruling out that his mother was the perpetrator, to let his suspicions settle on one of his siblings. And the moment his feet step onto the threshold of the training room, he is surprised by its vast area, muttering in admiration about the obscene wealth and the massive expanse of his family's estates. Zeke summons the system window to check the progress of his abilities and is surprised that the severing skill has risen to an advanced level. Wondering in bewilderment whether its repeated use in the bout is the secret behind this rapid development. He analyzes the situation, concluding that skills respond and activate according to his movements, wondering if this is proof of him possessing them beforehand, and will the system list any new technique he learns as an acquired skill. He also dives into his questions about the fine line separating normal skills from those specific to the class, as their activation mechanism seems largely identical. His gaze stops at the draconic skill, becoming suspicious of its extreme ambiguity, for he is completely unable to decipher the word points required to activate it. He decides to press the karma points option, discovering that harvesting them is linked to exterminating monsters and shedding their blood. He realizes that dungeons teem with those creatures, however their doors are locked in his face unless he reaches the rank of Purple Knight at a minimum. And despite all that, the biggest mystery that keeps him awake at night remains the secret of his time regression and the nature of this mysterious system. He tries to connect the threads between skills, classes, and extinct artifacts, but the scarcity of information hinders his conclusions. He shakes the dust of overthinking off his shoulders, making up his mind to pour his entire focus on honing his power, relying on his sword and what this system offers him, no matter the price he will pay to reach that. Zeke explains that the balance of power in this world relies on two pillars. The first is the knight's aura, which is honed inside the vaults of dungeons, and the second is the magic's mana, which is woven through magical circles. And these two powers repel each other like water and fire. That's why it is impossible for someone who awakens his aura to manipulate mana, and the exact opposite applies. But he sees a disguised blessing in his past inability to awaken any energy centers or circles, for despite his family kicking him out and ostracizing him for this reason, his journey of vagrancy led him to meet his greatest teacher, who taught him the invaluable. His teacher's greatest gifts to him were the healing arts and the innovative ether hall technique, which enabled him to harness the pure energy of nature, making the two of them the only entities on the face of the earth capable of manipulating ether. We move to see him immersed in grueling training that grinds his bones and muscles. Several hours pass, and his hands are bleeding profusely, muttering that his body is collapsing on the verge of a breakdown, and that stopping at this moment seems like a wise decision. In the blink of an eye, the healing skill activates automatically, followed by a support skill called stamina recovery, for his exhausted body to begin repairing its torn tissues at an unimaginable speed, and erasing all traces of the violent fatigue resulting from his harsh training. Zeke explains that the healing ability is considered one of the rarest skills of all, and he wouldn't have heard of it had it not been for his meeting with his teacher. And had he dared to reveal it in public, they would have cast looks of suspicion and accused him of being an anomaly, which is why he suppressed his desire to use it during his mutual grinding with Liam, where he had to conceal his pain and run back to his room to treat his wounds in secret. And now, with his body returning like steel once again, he will resume his hellish training cycle. From here stems the greatness of the healing skill. It grants him a terrifying advantage to train to the brink of death, then recover, and repeat the cycle endlessly. The threads of darkness begin to creep in, signaling the fall of night, causing Zeke to sigh deeply, announcing that the time for dinner has arrived. Wondering in bewilderment about the excuse he will invent for Decker after leaving the training ground destroyed and full of the traces of his brutal training. The wheel of time speeds by for a whole week, landing us in the Cradle's cafeteria. where mouths whisper about the radical and terrifying transformation in Zeke's personality to the extent that some attributed it to him practicing the dark arts, while others expressed their hidden hope that Zeke would continue crushing the pride of the arrogant and teaching them lessons. And in an isolated corner inside the dining hall, where an extravagant feast was laid out, we see someone relishing the cutting of a luxurious steak, while those around settle for modest meals. This was none other than Rena Turin, Zeke's cousin, the very girl who watched him with piercing looks during his bloody battle against Liam. Several other students are present in the same room, prompting one of them to comment, warning them of the necessity to eat despite their lack of appetite, as the upcoming sword duels will drain every drop of their energy. This student is called Owen, and he directs his words towards Leon, who jolts, angrily asking if he is trying to mock and provoke him. Owen coldly replies that he was merely giving innocent advice, disdainfully concluding that Leon's inferiority complex has reached pathetic levels. Leon seethes with anger and stands up, slamming his fist violently on the table, causing the table to shake and the piece of meat to fall from Rena's fork, causing her to shoot him a deadly glare filled with fury for daring to ruin her meal, causing beads of cold sweat to drip from Leon's forehead in panic and confusion. The defeated Jackin is also nearby, asking in a faint voice about the necessary measures to counter the threat of Zeke. Owen analyzes the situation, admitting that the bout was truly bloody and impressive, but he maliciously adds that Zeke will turn into a miserable laughingstock in the sword-dueling arena, mocking his lack of physical strength that barely enables him to lift his heavy sword blade, so how could he duel with it? Leon intervenes flatteringly to save face, claiming that Zeke was forced to forge a custom sword for his weakness because standard swords exceed his carrying capacity, justifying his defeat by stating it's impossible for him to bow before scum like him, and demand they admit that what happened was nothing but a blind stroke of luck that brought victory to Zeke. Displeasure appears clearly on Rena's features, following his ridiculous claim that Zeke's victory was a mere passing coincidence. And Elon is unable to even raise his eyes to meet her sharp gaze, so she surprises him with harsh words, affirming that if he is delusional enough to believe his own lie, then he is scum unworthy of the honor of belonging to the Knights of the Draker family. Then she leaves the table with arrogant coldness. Zeke explains that the dueling bouts, unlike the pancratium, rely on live swords, making them the primary cause of lifers and fatal injuries in the cradle, and it is the true test stone that exposes the vast differences between the students' skills. And 1 month after these final exams, the drums of the blessing ceremony will beat, the legendary event where the descendants of the Draker lineage awaken the Panem aura latent in their blood. Later, Mark orders Zeke to step forward to the arena. Zeke appears resting a massive sword on his shoulder, causing the audience's laughter to rise in mockery of him carrying an exaggeratedly sized weapon, accusing him of intentionally showing off to claim a power he doesn't possess in reality. Suddenly, Rena's voice rings out calling him, and as soon as he raised his gaze, he spotted her advancing with confident steps from the opposite side of the platform until they stopped face to face in the middle of the battlefield to tell him clearly that she deliberately chose him specifically to be her opponent. He answered her coldly, expressing his admiration for her good choice, assuring her of his great happiness in taking this challenge. She confesses to him that she watched him lifting the heavy claymore sword with such lightness, and now standing before him, she was certain that the one standing opposite her is not Zeke, that weak boy she knew in the past, who was unable to even carry a normal blade. And she wonders in secret whether this development is the product of his physical growth, admitting that the aura emanating from him instills terror. However, she shakes off these thoughts immediately, warning herself against slacking before the start of the bout, especially since she was the one who arrogantly initiated the challenge. Zeke declares his commitment to exerting his utmost effort as usual, acknowledging at the same time that standing before the Lightning Knight stirs nerve-wracking tension. He recounts that Rena, who will one day bear the title Lightning Knight, will be among the most prominent heroes who carved their names in the Continental Wars, to be classified as one of the greatest knights of her era. And among the elite of the new generation of swordsmen, she is the prodigy who awakened her aura before receiving the blessing, perhaps even years ago, but hid it throughout her time in the cradle under the pretext of wanting to hone her combat fundamentals. Mark interrupts their conversation, ordering them to prepare, then lowers his hand, announcing the start of the confrontation. Rena lunges immediately, executing a dashing spear thrust, but Zeke parries it masterfully, so she retreats lightly and swiftly towards the edge of the ring to rearrange her next attack. And now, having seized the initiative, she launches a new raid. However, Zeke is unable to dodge this time, forcing him to take the blow directly with his sword's blade. The force of the collision knocks him far across the field's floor. Zeke succeeds in regaining his balance by lowering his center of gravity and leaning forward, but he realizes the widening spatial gap between them, certain that Rena's skill far exceeds his expectations. Despite that, his certainty in his ability to crush her did not waver. Rena dashes again, causing the crowd's cheers and shouts to rise all around, demanding her to stop going easy on him, while Jakan asks mockingly whether Zeke is under the illusion that Rena is joking with him. And now, after Zeke has deciphered her combat style, we find him steadily blocking her successive strikes. Rena admits in secret that she can sense the gaps in his defense, even though they are extremely narrow, but no matter how great her speed and skill reached, Zeke's blade was present to intercept her sword every single time, as if he is toying with her and applauding her pathetic attempts. In another glimpse, he leaves an exposed opening for her, making the scene look as if he is teaching her a training lesson amidst the heat of battle, in a veiled attempt to guide her towards elevating her style in sword arts. Their blades clash again, sending hot sparks flying from the force of friction, but Rena chooses this time to withdraw and create distance between them, showing clear signs of exhaustion and panting.
Zeke sighs, confirming to himself that this is the exact same style adopted by the Lightning Knight during her days at the Cradell Academy. Evaluating her style as honest, which is a given for someone who reveres the fundamentals, but he is certain that this literal adherence is her true shackle, resolving to shatter this shell to liberate her potential. Zeke takes a low offensive stance, making Rena wonder in bewilderment about his intentions, analyzing his posture as serving only one purpose, to close the spatial gap between them. However, his explosive speed was out of the ordinary, as he crossed the separating distance in the blink of an eye while she was drowned in her analyses, pouncing with a crushing vertical strike that forced her to dodge to the side quickly. She reassures herself that the remaining distance between them is enough for her to make an appropriate reaction to all his movements, for Zeke to suddenly proceed to plant his sword and solidly plow the floor, a move that forced Rena to take a step back. This trap was an integral part of his combat tactic, where the shards of gravel flying from the strike hit her face directly, making her lose her focus and inflicting temporary blindness. And as soon as she regained her sight and looked ahead, she found that he had devoured the separating distance and was now right up against her, aiming his blade with deadly coldness at her throat, making Rena certain that her end had come. But the surprise came in the form of Zeke's sword flying far into the air, simultaneously with a faint flash of a blue aura that could barely be seen with the naked eye, revealing that she had summoned a very minuscule amount of her aura energy to repel his fatal attack, throwing her old vow of not activating the aura before officially joining the academy against the wall. Mark notes that the audience's eyes were too slow to comprehend what happened, since she resorted to using the aura in the final fraction of a second. Zeke asks his question, condemning what she just did, while her features seemed dripping with malice and anger at her involuntary action. He tells her in a decisive tone that the bout has not been settled yet, surprising her with a blow that lodged directly in her throat mercilessly, causing her to fall to her knees on the ground, blood bleeding from between her lips. Leon erupts, shouting that this arena is meant for sword dueling, refusing to acknowledge these cheap combat tactics, bringing down a wave of criticism from the rest of the attendees, considering his abandonment of his sword an unforgivable disgrace for any knight. However, Zeke turned his back to them, uncaring for their chatter, snatched the victory, and that was the end of it. Rena struggles to stand on her trembling feet, prompting Zeke to ask her if she has the will to continue. She answers him stubbornly that she hasn't tasted defeat yet, and that his strike hit her only because she dropped her defenses for a moment, before swallowing the rest of her words upon realizing how naive her excuse was. Forced to admit that had he used a dagger instead of his bare fist, she would be a lifeless corpse right now. She trampled her high pride to turn towards Mark, announcing her surrender and admission of defeat. Shock fell like a thunderbolt on Owen and the rest. This boy who defeated her is the very same one they called the scum of humanity mere weeks ago. And here he is, scripting a sweeping victory over one of the rarest talents among all the noble families. Zeke turns his back to the arena, leaving, while Mark officially announces crowning Zeke the winner of the bout. The scene then shifts to a towering castle overlooking a city devoured by raging flames, where knights plunge into a brutal, bloody massacre, pushing the victims' bodies towards a massive trench overflowing with body parts and the dead. In the inner fortified corridors of the castle, one of the men directs his words to someone named Abil, asking sharply how can he enjoy sipping tea amidst this tense circumstance, relaying to him the news of Rena's defeat at the hands of that scoundrel Zeke. It is revealed to us that the speaker's name is William, to which Abil coldly replies, reproaching him for constantly exaggerating and taking things seriously. He inquires from him about the remaining time till the blessing ritual, to which William answers that the deadline extends until the appearance of the next full moon. Abil rises, leaving the room, whose walls and desk turn out to be stained with blood in every corner, muttering that the time to pay a family visit has come,
Abil asks William if he intends to go alone. Abil answers that he has become eager to see the nature of the awakening the youngest member of the family will have. And although the earthquake of Zeke's victory shook the pillars of the entire cradle facility, he simply returned back to the training grounds to continue his usual exercises. A whole month passes, arriving at the promised day, the day of the blessing ritual. Zeke lets out a deep sigh, admitting his inability to comprehend how he succeeded in reaching the Red Knight rank with this frail body in his past life. He summons the system window to be surprised by the amazing development of his skills. Even one of them ascended to the expert level, while the severing skill remained stuck at the beginner level for a reason he ignores. Zeke analyzes the system's mechanism, explaining that surpassing the skill mastery degree for the expert level leads to upgrading it and resetting the counter to 0. And he has indeed succeeded in raising the level of the swift step skill he snatched during the dueling bout. He interrupts his thoughts to ask Decker about his aim. The servant informs him that the time of departure has come, and only 2 hours remain, so Zeke assures him he will catch up him soon, ordering him to complete all preparations. After the 2 hours pass, we see Zeke embarking on the carriage accompanied by Decker, setting off on their journey, where the servant points out that a long time has passed since his last visit to the main province. This region, under the influence of the Draker family, rests within the borders of the Troy Duchy, and although the actual capital of the family lies in the Four Seasons Castle in the heart of the central region of the continent, the blessing ritual is exclusive to this very province, the cradle of the legend of the first dragon slayer. The carriage wheels stop spinning after a long march, and as soon as Zeke dismounts from it, we discover that this great stronghold is known as the Dragon's Nest, and it is the original cradle and historical headquarters of the Draker lineage. Mark's voice rings out, ordering all trainees to line up and stand in absolute reverence. Zeke roams his gaze around, muttering that he didn't pay attention to this matter in the past, for all those present to watch are elites and prominent figures who headline the continental news. He is absolutely certain that his family has planted its spies to monitor his movements, but he realizes their intentions will evaporate the moment they see his inevitable failure to awaken, returning to marginalizing him again. However, Zeke's features suddenly change to be clad in overwhelming anger, clenching his fist tight in fury and wondering deep within about the motive that brought that scoundrel here. We hear Abil's voice exchanging greetings with someone, the latter asking him if he has his eye on one of the trainees. He denies that, explaining that his attendance is driven by other reasons and purposes, and it became clear that his presence is linked to his cute little brother's attendance in this place. Let us get to know his identity. He is the second son of the Draker family, nicknamed the Lion's Blade, Abil Draker. His gaze intersects with Zeke, who whispers to himself that despite bearing the title Lion's Blade, the title that reflects his bloody reality is the Butcher Knight. Zeke averts his face, trying to rein his anger, realizing his inability to take any step currently. He recalls his previous life, confirming that Abil didn't bother attending the blessing ritual for his sake back then, prompting him to ask with concern whether his recent actions messed with the course of the future. His hands appear covered in deep scars as a witness to his lethal training, deciding with a firm look that if this is the case, he should consider it a golden opportunity in his favor. Mark breaks the silence, officially announcing the start of the blessing ritual, summoning Aaron to be the first to step forward to the arena. We watch Aaron rolling up his sleeve and dipping his hand in the water basin, approaching a sharp thorn submerged in it, letting drops of his blood flow into the water while a glowing blue aura emerges from the fountain, its radiance extending to surround the statue erected next to it. Signs of awe are drawn on Aaron's face as he begins to sense the aura's energy, and it smoothly sneaks into the depths of his body, causing his energy centers to expand and dilate, forming a roaring energy vortex spinning violently inside him. Zeke comments, explaining, through this ritual, members of the Draker lineage are able to unseal their latent aura concurrently with their graduation from the cradle at the age of 12, which is a terrifying awakening speed compared to normal knights who don't reach this stage until after surpassing the age of 20.